Hi. A while ago, I published a video series on setting up this USB GPIB interface on Ubuntu to be able to communicate with a keysight instrument, in my case, a network analyzer, using a Python script. And at the time, I was able to successfully install and set up PyVisa. I was able to successfully set up the USB GPIB interface and successfully communicate with the keysight instrument using a Python script. However, now I run the same Python script and it fails. It fails to communicate with the keysight instrument. And of course, the first thing I do, I look at the LED indicators. Of course, at the time that I tried to communicate with the keysight instrument, the GPIB end was already connected to the keysight instrument. However, I disconnected it now only for the purpose of demonstration. And as you can see, all three LEDs here, I'm sorry, this is not, all three LEDs here, they are on, including the fail LED, which means something disrupted the configuration of this interface. And so the first thing I do, I check whether the two modules corresponding to this hardware, namely Agilent_82357A and also GPIB_common, whether these two modules have been loaded properly. So the first thing I do, I run lsmod and refine the output of lsmod with this keyword 82357. And I receive no output, which means neither of those two modules have been loaded. And the other thing I can do, I can modprobe those specific modules. And these are the modules, the names of the modules. So one is GPIB common, and I can modprobe. So let's just run this first. Of course, this is not going to be the solution, but this is what's going to give us some insight into what's happening. Okay, so this error message is not very helpful here. It's not very informative. Let's run the other modprobe. And and as you can see, the error message is a bit more detailed, and it is complaining that such a kernel object file, .ko, by the way, stands for kernel object. So such a kernel object file cannot be found inside this directory, or maybe this directory cannot be found. So what we do, we take a look at this directory. All right. And let's see. It seems that, yes, there is a directory corresponding to each kernel installed on Ubuntu. And at the time I set up this hardware on Ubuntu, this was the kernel version. And now this is the kernel version. So this is the directory corresponding to the kernel version. And I can show that with this running uname -r, which shows this is the kernel version, same as the name of this directory. So what I do, I take a look at the inside of this directory. And so as you can see, I did something I was not supposed to do. Okay. And then, so as you can see, there is a directory called GPIB, and we can take a look inside, and you will see that those two kernel object files, they can be found inside this directory. However, let's just take a look at the other directory, which is the latest directory. So 6.8, and I think it was 52, the last one, yes. And then, as you can see, there is no directory called GPIB, right? And so that pinpoints the problem. The files, the kernel object files that we need, that are needed to be copied and created into this directory, they are not there. It turns out that the first few steps of installation of the Linux-GPIB package that we went through in the past are what we need to repeat to be able to create the required kernel object files in this directory. And here I laid out 10 steps. They are straightforward to follow. So what I do first, I change the directory to opt/opt, and /opt is the directory I use to store my source files, to install the source files from /opt. And this is something that you might not prefer. Anyway, so after taking a look at the content of /opt, I see that the source file that I used to install the Linux-GPIB package is still here, and including the directory created out of extracting this tarball. So I changed the directory. So basically what I'm doing, I'm skipping step number 2 and step number 3. So I'm starting from step number 4. So basically start from here. And then here in my case, I also skip step number 5, and I jump to step number 6. All right, so the first thing I do, I install the latest version of kernel headers on Ubuntu. So I do this to make sure, a possible kernel update tomorrow will not make me go through this again. All right. And then I run this to make sure that all object files are cleared. And then sudo make install. So first I run make. This would create the object files. I need to wait a bit, and then this last step is sudo make install, which copies the KO files to where they need to be. Basically, it creates the GPIB directory in that folder corresponding to the latest kernel version and copies the kernel object files to that directory. So we need to wait a bit here. Okay. So as you can see, this is done. And then the last thing I run, basically, sudo make install, which will copy the created kernel object files to where they need to be again. All right. So, and then after this is done, what I do is I just change the directory to /lib /modules again, and it's just clean up. And again, I take a look inside that directory. '52 was the latest one. And of course, before running this, I can check. Yes, 52 is the latest one. And I can change the directory to 52. 52. And then now I can see that the GPIB directory has been created. And again, I can further inspect this directory, and you can see Agilent _82357A. And then, yes, the kernel object file has been copied. Again, I can take a look at the sys directory, and you can see that GPIB _common has been copied to that directory. The next and last step of this video is to verify whether we are able to communicate with the keysight instrument using the Python script. And the first thing we need to do, of course, we need to connect the GPIB end of the interface back to the keysight instrument. I've already connected the interface back to my network analyzer. And now I open Python interpreter to run a minimal code. Import visa, and then the resource manager variable, and then I use the Py backend. All right, and then I list my resources. And as you can see, one of the resources is basically the visa address. And since I see the GPIB, I realize that this is the visa address to my network analyzer. And then I basically open this resource. And then now I use this visa address. And okay, here it is. And then the last thing I do, I send a query to the instrument so that the instrument IDs itself. So VNA query. And then star IDN. Yes. And then, of course, this is what I expected. To recap, we observed that any kernel upgrade on Ubuntu will disrupt the configuration of this USB GPIB interface. In order to address that issue, we need to repeat the first few installation steps of the Linux-GPIB package. Those few installation steps help us to create the kernel object files and then copy them to the directory corresponding to the latest kernel version in /lib/modules. At the end of this video, we were able to successfully verify that we are indeed able to communicate with the keysight instrument using the Python script that we tried. The details of this video are all included in the descriptions below the video. Please stay tuned for my next videos in this series.